one of the things that I study really extensively is the migration of humanity, of Homo sapien, out of the northeastern part of Africa and how the migration patterns of Homo sapien across the world are tracked. Um, there's a misconception in what you're stating about that DNA. See, the thing is that our mitochondrial DNA doesn't actually trace back to Asia. We have unique haplogroups here. We have haplogroups that actually started here, like the X haplogroup actually starts here and has a backwards migration pattern. Um, and we have haplogroups that are only seen here. Now, as Homo sapien leaves the place of origin, which is really kind of all of Africa, considering the fact that we now know that Homo sapiens speciates through convergence of several different species. Um, and as Homo sapien, that around 50,000 years ago departs from the northeast corner of Africa at the time, now we call it the Arabian Peninsula because it's slightly separated now. As Homo sapien is leaving that area, they move through areas, but they're not leaving people behind in those areas. We now know that Homo sapien has been in Turtle Island, North America, and Abya, South America, for like 54,000 years. And that is the split of the haplogroups here in the Western Hemisphere from all the other haplogroups in the world. Maybe you'll remember that I just said that around 50,000 years ago, we start leaving the northeastern portion of Africa. Now, because there are haplogroups that are here that are nowhere else, what we're looking at is my group leaves the northwest corner or northeast corner of Africa and it travels across to this area and then it goes to another area. I'm not leaving my siblings behind. I'm not leaving my mom behind. I'm not leaving my children behind. My entire group is moving across and we're going to a new area. That doesn't mean that I have ancestors in Asia. What that means is that I moved through a land and brought my ancestry here. There's also unique DNA that is seen here in Turtle Island and on Abya that's not seen anywhere else in the world. And that unique DNA is what we call a ghost species. We do see ghost species in a few different spaces across the planet. We see 3 ghost species in 2 different nations within Africa. The Yoruba people have 3 ghost species in them, and the Kwe people of South Africa have 3 different ghost species in them. And we see that in indigenous Australians who are like 70,000 years old, which are actually the first group to move outside of Africa and settle permanently in a space, the oldest continued civilization outside of Africa. They also have a ghost species within them that is unique to Australia. And we also see like Denisovan in Turtle Island indigenous people and Abyalian indigenous people. The highest percent of Denisovan is not in Asia. The highest percentage of Denisovan is actually in Australia and in at the islands in Papua New Guinea. So we can see by these unique ghost species, we can see by the other species that we came in contact with when we moved, and we can see by how the mitochondrial DNA and how the paternal DNA, which is the Y DNA, traces and tracks, and where there's no other of those types of DNA or lines of DNA. So the mitochondrial lines and the Y lines that are here aren't seen anywhere else. We did not descend from people in Siberia. There's actually backwards migration. That's where they get the DNA that they get from those in Turtle Island and Abya. The land bridge theory has been debunked as the first migration of humanity or of Homo sapiens into Abya and Turtle Island. The land bridge theory as the last form of migration over is still true, right? The last migration here started 50,000 years ago, though, and the land bridge was only open from 18,000 to 15,000 years ago. So, like, it we were here already. The land bridge also has a backwards migration, which I just mentioned, right? And all those backward migration DNAs that we see are because of the time when the land bridge is over and people going back. My nephew dog, Falcor, is joining us today. So I understand what you're thinking and where you're getting that thought process from, but as a scientist, that's just not the way that that actually plays out. That's not what that actually means.